There we go. Good morning. Good morning. This is session number 22, I believe. And this morning, I'm really happy to introduce to you my friend, my good friend, Dr. Bill Purkiss. I want to tell you a little bit about him. He's come all the way from Arizona to be here at Chaffey. He was with my oral interpretation class yesterday, and today he's here with you. Let me tell you a little bit about his background. Number one, he was a teacher for 44 years. Yes. Started out as a high school teacher, moved in. He's an old dude. And I retired here about 2 years ago. I'm flapping my microphone. That's true. And you know what? I didn't even test it. That's one thing I forget, but it usually is okay. Only once did we have that trouble that it wasn't. There it is. Fine. Okay. 44 years in higher education, teaching communication studies, drama, theater. In fact, he has, to his credit, over 100 plays that he has directed. He has been Director of the Year at Orange Coast College and Orange County. And he's an actor. He's been an opera singer and has been Chaffey's Lecturer of the Year, which is the highest honor that we give to one of our teachers here at Chaffey. And has been an author and a singer and an actor and a director and one of our prize colleagues here at Chaffey. And now he's out in the desert with the coyotes and the snakes and the rabbits and having the time of his life in retirement with his beautiful wife, Christina. But he comes back to Chaffey once or twice a semester, because I asked him to talk to students, because I think that him retiring was a huge loss to Chaffey. And today he's here to talk to you about, in a very informal way, because that's the way Bill is. He's quite an informal kind of guy, about his experience and his own personal experiences. And I'd like you to welcome him in any way you deem appropriate. And then I'll hand this over to you.
All right.
You are being seen and heard by the world.
I'm being seen and being heard by the world.
This
okay.
is CNN.
Oh my goodness. Where is teaching going? Anyway, I'm talking.
Here you are.
Okay. It's really wonderful to be here with you. I have done a lot of things. I've been in a lot of places. The thing that probably is one of the most important things for me, at least, and one that a lot of people don't necessarily know, is that I have a gay son. And part of what I know that last week you took the heterosexual questionnaire. And did you all look over that questionnaire? Okay. Did it kind of surprise you a little bit? It didn't surprise you at all. Did it surprise you how the questions about whether or not you were heterosexual were, that they kind of juxtapose some of the value systems that this culture has a tendency to place upon gay people? I would love to be able to tell you that as a father of a gay man, my son came out to me and I simply hugged him and said, "God, that's a wonderful, son. I love you. Everything is terrific. Let's just move on with our life." But I'm a man who's a product of this culture, had been enculturated in the same way most men and women have been enculturated in this place. And even though I was an actor, I have been an actor, still am, and director, and all my life I have been around and amongst gay people, because especially in the motion picture business, television business, live theater, that's one of the places where you find a lot of gay people, because there's a lot of acceptance there, a lot of openness. It's one thing to have dear friends, and all that kind of stuff. But my son, that was something that just I was not in any way really prepared for. I played football in high school and freshman year at San Jose State. I was, my son was an all-league halfback at Irvine High School. He was, this really handsome young man who had no problems getting dates or anything like that. It was really, he really was able to do all these things. And then when he came out to me as gay, it was something that I had not in any way envisioned. I had seen, my sons as all, quote, normal young men, you know what I'm saying? And so it was a real interesting thing for me. I'll tell you the story of how I found out about my son. My son was, went back to New York University and to the experimental theater unit back there. And he was working there, and everything was wonderful. I kept getting messages from him and all this kind of stuff about what a wonderful school it was and everything like that. And then I got a telephone call one night. You see, I guess it was about 11 o'clock at night here on the West Coast. So that would put it, 12, 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock over there in New York. And I got this call, and it was from my son. And he said, Dad, he said, I've been sitting here. Whew. He said, I've been sitting here trying to decide whether or not I would tell you I'm gay or I'd kill myself. And then he said, I guess I've decided. And he hung up. Well, I was just, going crazy. And, where I was going crazy was, what, gay? How's my son gay? And I was just going, all of a sudden it was, how do we cure him? How do we, what is this? How could this happen? All this stuff. I was just going through this. And my wife, you heard Ginny talk. Excuse me. This is a very emotional thing for me as far as my son is concerned. You heard Ginny talk about my beautiful wife, Christina. She's a wonderful person, and she's the sanest person in our house. And there's only 2 of us living there. And she watched me just kind of going crazy for a few minutes. And then finally she looked at me, and it was kind of like this incredible slap in the face with a wet fish kind of thing. She said, look at you. She said, that could have been the police calling with a different message. She said, listen. She said, Nathan is fine. He knows who he is. And now he's not going to commit suicide over something that he feels fine about now. So now the only question is there any place in his life for you? And the only reason that there wouldn't be is if I continued with the kind of stupid reactionary kind of thing that I had going on in my head, I was a complete surprise. And that really did. So I took time off, went back east, went to spend a couple of weeks back there in New York. And the first time I'd ever been in a gay bar. That was an experience. Walked in the door, and it was all the stereotypes were working in my head. Keep your back to the wall, drop change, don't bend over and pick it up. All of those kinds of things were going on in my head. That's stupid stuff, isn't it? But that's the kind of stuff that especially straight males have a tendency to work with, which I'm proud to see that a lot of young straight males don't have quite the same kind of focus that those of us who are older males, really had to deal with. And it was a strange thing. We were there, and and a gay bar is the same as any other kind of bar. You go to the bar and you get oiled up a little bit, and then you're looking around for a social relationship. That's just what happens. And I didn't stay there till 2, but I guess at 2 o'clock everybody is beautiful in whatever terminology you want to use. At 2 o'clock, the desperation. I don't know. But anyway, I was there, and I was sitting there with my son, and and he was up and he was dancing and all this kind of stuff. And I was sitting there, and he was dancing, and everybody was moving around. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I started getting this strange thing going on in my head. Nobody's asking me to dance. I'm just, here I am. I'm saying, what am I, chopped liver or something like that? And my son he gave me a bad time. He said, no, Dad. He said, you're just too rigidly straight. And that was the beginning, really, of my education as far as my son was concerned. And I have to say that now, my son, who lives in San Francisco, and which is a wonderful, wonderful place, And I really suggest you go and visit San Francisco. Go and hang out in the Castro. You won't have to keep your back to the wall. You can pick up any change you drop. It's not a problem. You will have, it's a wonderfully free place, and especially I think it's an important place for young men to go, because I think it's a place that we begin to dispel our fears. Because the problem in this world, as far as gays are concerned, is those of us who are young straight men, especially young straight men. Because how many times have you ever heard stories in the news or any other place about young, foaming at the mouth gay men going in straight bashing? Never happens. It's always young straight males who are beating up on gay men. Think about that, And the sad thing about it, I mean, for example, if you go to Texas, you will see that in Texas you have Friday night is football and Saturday night is gay bashing, and that's part of the regular process that goes on in Texas. And the people who are gay bashing who are caught quite often are very strong, sincere churchgoers, church-going young men. I want you to think about that, I love that little sign that's out there, the little thing that people wear that says WWJD. You know that? That's a very important thing. It's an enormously important question. WWJD. I just don't know, no matter what, I can't imagine Jesus ever being in a group of people that went out gay bashing. You know what I'm saying? I can't see him being violent about that. As a matter of fact, I can't see Jesus coming back and speaking either on the 700 Club or in the Crystal Cathedral. It wasn't exactly his style. He was out there with the funky people. He was out there dealing with people. And I'm not trying to be religious with you right here, right now. I'm just talking kind of historically in what we talk about as far as that's concerned. My way of looking at it is that I think that as a society, there are a lot of things that we get to look at. And I think that one of the things that's really important is that we begin to realize that gay people like my son, who is a wonderful young man, I mean a wonderful young man. He worked for some time. He was an assistant for about 10 years with Mark Leno, who's an assemblyman up in Sacramento. Nathan was instrumental in putting through a lot of different kinds of legislation. As a matter of fact, some of you may have heard about the legislation that makes it that the part of the state law is that if you are a transgendered person, that means that you're a person that you have perhaps a male body or a female body, but you know that you are the opposite sex. And that's not something where people just wake up in the morning and say, oh, by the way, I think I'm really a woman, or I'm really a man. It's a syndrome that psychologists and psychiatrists have studied, and they know it to be true, that people are, their hormonal process, their body is, inside, they are one gender, but on the outside, their outside physical characteristics are another. And so there's an operation that takes place, and these people, there's enough background of information about transgender, which is not gay. Transgender has nothing to do with gay. It has to do with people, having this, knowing that they're kind of trapped in a body that's different from who they really are. Well, anyway, though transgender, I mean, you want to talk about the people who have the worst time in the world around here. It's transgendered people, much more so than gays, or I mean, if you're gay, you can pass quite often, and you don't look like you're gay, perhaps, or you can act like you're not gay or something like that. But if you're transgendered and you're walking around in one body and you know you're someone else, that's a torturous kind of thing. That's a absolute physical schizophrenia is what you're in. Well, my son was instrumental. He wrote legislation that is now in law here in California, where if a company works for the state, if you first of all, if you work for the state, or if you're a company that is has contracts with the state, you have to provide in your medical insurance coverage for transgender. Okay, and that means including operation. In the same way, if you have an appendectomy, or you have something wrong with your body that needs to be corrected, that they will cover that in your insurance. I'm real proud of that as far as my son is concerned, because in the same way there's a lot of prejudice against gays, there are a lot of gays who are prejudiced against transgendered people. You know, they're not one of us. They just haven't decided who they are, you know, which is really a mean and vicious thing to say, but it took a long time. And everyone was saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? He did it because it was right. He said, Dad, he said, it's just a necessary thing to do. I'm proud of my son for that. The idea of being gay, it's come up and it's become even more intense nowadays, just in this last few weeks, with the minister, for example, I can't remember his name, who's the head of the evangelicals, 3 million evangelicals, Wyatt, is it, or something like that? I can't remember his name, but anyway, he just was outed, and you know, and all. What's that? Haggerty? Something like that. I can't remember his name, but you know, you all know what it was because it was big. It was big news just in the last couple of weeks before the election, and and I think that's really kind of an important thing to think about, and it's really part of the debate that I hope that in the next few years we really have in this country, and we put this behind us. And what I mean by that, very simply, is this: that man has to be one of the most tortured men around. You can think about it. You know, what is it that makes you be a person who absolutely wants to crank down on other people, and then within yourself you're going out and secretly doing and being that thing that you say is so hateful to you? You know, we had a mayor up in Seattle. I mean, there's an awful lot. If you look at the Republican Party for it, probably the same in the Democratic Party. I know it's the same in the Democratic Party, except that most of the gays who are in the Democratic Party aren't secret. But in the Republican Party, I mean, it's coming out. There are just literally throughout everybody's staff and everybody, there's just a whole bunch of gay people. And we're going, what's that all about? Well, gay people, you know, they go out and get jobs too. But the sad thing is that how these people are able to live their lives and and write legislation and things of that sort about themselves. You know, I can hide, I'll be okay, but I'm going to write this legislation that's you know, is detrimental to other people who are like myself. And people say, well, you know, I mean, one of the things you have to do is, what we want to do is we want to set out and we want to cure people who are gay. I'm going to tell you this. There is no way in my consciousness, in my way of looking at things, that there's any possibility a person decides to be gay. Now think about it. We've got a lot of young men in this room, okay? I'd say the whole population in here, which I doubt, but say the whole population in this room is straight, all straight men. Now if people are gay because they choose to become gay, then there's got to be a really powerful motivation to say, I'm stepping out and I'm going to become gay. And you know what? I'm going to become gay. I'm going to, first of all, God is going to hate me, you know. Oh, if he doesn't hate me, he hates the sin, but of course, you know, it's kind of hard to hate the sin without hating sin, you know, that kind of thing. My church is going to go against me. My mother and father are going to go against me. The culture that I live in is going to go against me. I'm going to become hated, okay? But that's cool, you know. Problem is too is that when kids who are gay, you know, come out to themselves as being gay, they don't look around and go, I'm going to join those other people, like, you know, say to become a goth or something like that. I don't even know if that's a movement anymore as far as young people are concerned. But you know, where the kids are wearing all the black clothes and the heavy makeup and things of that sort, you know, at least you can look around and say, there's somebody else. But in the gay community, I mean, it's, you know, you can't, there isn't anything, you don't have a scarlet G on your shoulder or anything of that sort. You're just, you know, you're all of a sudden, you're realizing, as my son realized, because I asked him, I said, how did you know that you were gay? When did you decide that? I used that term to start with. And he said, oh, Dad, he said, decide? He said, when was it that you decided to be straight? I thought about that. When did I decide to be straight? Never occurred to me. I just remembered that there was one time in Miss Basher's class, one of my classes, where Miss Basher told me to go up to the board and write a math problem, and I wasn't going up on the board to write anything at that moment. I wasn't standing up, and you guys all know why I wouldn't stand up at that moment. You know, it's just no way. And the reason that it happened was because I saw cute little Janet Jones over there in the corner, and I was fantasizing about this little girl, and seeing her, and all of a sudden there wasn't any way I was standing up and walking to the blackboard. No. Why are you being rebellious today? I wasn't being rebellious. I just had a hard on. I mean, that, and every young man in this room understands that. But the question is, what is it that makes it happen? And women, you have your things, but not being a woman, I can't really relate to those kinds of things about what it is where you had your sexual awareness. But all of a sudden, you begin looking around and saying, that's really fascinating to me. And what Nathan said was that he used to sit in junior high school with the guys. He was a very popular guy, athlete and all this kind of stuff. And they used to sit outside the girls' gymnasium. And then the girls would go running over, they would be in their leotards, and they'd run from the dressing room over to the dance room. And the guys would all sit there and go, they'd be doing all their talk about the girls, and doing what young straight boys do, as far as sexual fantasies are concerned. It's awful, but it's a process you go through. And he said, all of a sudden I realized, he said, I was sitting there with the guys, and he said, I wasn't watching the girls running across. I was watching the guys watch the girls. And he said, that wasn't a decision I made. He said, it was a realization I had. All of a sudden, that's what was exciting to me. And when you think about it, there's, that's the way it is with all of us. If we are not encumbered by some kind of cultural statement about who we are sexually, who we are, it just kind of happens naturally, and all of a sudden we do it. I mean, I don't know how I got there, but I started out really liking all women, but then I narrowed in on those Latin women. Boy, I'll tell you, I love that olive skin and dark hair, and oh man, that just really was a turn on for me. I don't know where I got that. I was born a Polak. And I'm just an old pink guy, and all. But I found I really, that was my and my wife, who's a Latina, she just said, "Oh man, I love that pink skin ears," she's got terrible taste, but I'm glad. And the reality is that tastes that we have, all of those things that kind of come out, are things that we can't explain it. It's just I just really like that, And so when we start to look at it from that standpoint, I think it's important, I hope that as a culture, that we seriously start looking at this and in terms of, if we want to call this a Christian nation, that we truly start to look at it from a true, quote, Christian sense, which is, first of all, to render under Caesar, and that's an old line, and secondly, that we begin to look at people and say, I'm a firm believer that God doesn't make junk, and if I woke up someday and that's who I am, that's not something that I necessarily decided to do. If gay is such a neat thing, I got my checkbook right now. Is there any guy in here, any straight guy in here who's willing for a price to become gay, not just for the day, but for the rest of their life? They'll take it and I'll pay you to be gay. I didn't think so. You don't become gay. Gay is something that you are from the time. And now knowing my son Nathan, when I look back to his childhood, I see the way he grew up. He grew up differently. He really did. He had a different way of seeing the world. He had a different way of perceiving, a different way of dealing with the world. And it was really beautiful. It had a kind of softness to it originally when he was just a little child. Then the more he saw his dad and his two brothers, both of whom were straight, dealing with the world, he started taking it on. He was good at it. Physically he was very good. And as I say, he was the athlete in the crowd, and he was the one who was the artist. He got up and he was able to he was the actor. He was the lead in the high school play and all that kind of stuff. And he was in student council, and he was doing everything. And it almost killed him, or almost caused him to kill himself, because he was trying so hard to be what he thought I, as a straight man, would want my son to be, and which I have to say, the way I was, those really were the messages I was sending out. I'm not proud of it now at all, but those were the messages I was sending out. You know, how you doing? Who's your girlfriend today? You know, all that kind of stuff. You know, the dads have a tendency to do with sons, and it's kind of, that's a cool thing to do. And all of a sudden, my son has to become someone other than himself in order to feel that he's all right with dad. And that is just really sad. That's sick, you know. I mean, I love my sons. I mean, I love my boys so much because they're beautiful kids. I love all three of them. I hug them. I kiss them, all three of them. I'm real caring about them. They never felt that they've at a loss for their father or for their mother. They have a lot of that support, and it's just who they are. You know, I mean, and that's a really powerful thing. And the thing you have to realize is that every person in here has a 1 in 10 chance, by the statistics, of having a gay child. You say, not my kid. Well, take it from one who said, not my kid. You can, okay? You know, I mean, and you can't train a child not to be who they are any more than I could take you and say, I'm going to train you to be a man. I'm going to train you how to spit and scratch, how to write your name a certain special way, how to be, you know, the guys all understand that, you know, and all of those kinds of things. You just go, that is nuts, because I'm a woman, I'm not a man. You see what I'm saying? It's totally foreign, isn't it? When you look at it from that standpoint, it becomes very real and very natural. Yes, Jenny.
It reminds me of years ago, the way we used to do to left-handed children.
Oh, I'm left-handed, yeah.
Being one. Left-handed children were not allowed to be left-handed.
Yep.
Punished for being left-handed because it was assumed that left-handed children were ruled by the devil, because you know the devil sits on the left side and angels and God sit on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you were left-handed, then you were ruled by the devil. And here in this country, we used to, if you could not train a child to be right-handed by the age of 12,
Yep.
they were put into institutions for life.
That's right.
Here in this home of the
Yeah.
brave and the free. And some of us that are mature, we're on the tail end of that.
Yep.
And it's
I wasn't tail ending. I had a teacher who, in the first grade, where I was supposed to learn to write, and for those of you who are watching this on television, what Ginny was talking about is the problem of being left-handed historically, and that those of us who are, as Ginny so nicely put it, mature, but really what we're saying are old farts. Those of us who are old, you know, had to go through a situation where being left-handed was unacceptable. I was in a school where when I would pick up a pencil with my left hand, you know, and the teacher saw it, she'd walk by and she'd whack me on the knuckles with a ruler. You know, and that's nasty. That really can hurt, you know, but that's what she would do. And I still am left-handed, got horrible handwriting. I have a real doctor's handwriting, you know. You can't read it. And everybody goes, oh, that's so distinguished. No, it's just sloppy, because I never really was able to learn penmanship. Those of you who are left-handed, you know, now if you see left-handed people, they're able to write underneath because they've developed the skills for the left-handedness. The teachers have developed the skills to teach left-handed people. But what you see left-handed people who are older, they have a tendency to do is write over like this. And of course, when we write, you see the smudge on the ink and all that kind of stuff. Your hand's going right across the ink. You see, no one took time to teach anyone that kind of thing. The thing we have to understand is actually your left side of your head controls the right side of your body. So if you're left-handed, that means, well, you're in your right mind. So only left-handed people are really in their right mind, and I love that. But it's the truth, and that's the same kind of dilemma that the gay person is going through right now. And thank God it's changing, because people, I think that young people especially, are having a lot less fear about it. I mean, to me, it saddens me so much when I see things like Defense of Marriage Act. I mean, what a strange kind of term to use. I mean, I don't know about if anyone in here is married besides Ginny and myself, but I can't see anything about my life. I mean, when they started marrying people up in Sacramento, you remember that? You know, they had the gay people up there. I didn't suddenly feel like I wanted to kick my wife out of the house and go find a man. You know, there wasn't any threat to my marriage. There wasn't anything that really that really got into that. And the reality is that gay people feel really a problem, because on one level, if they follow what many people consider to be the stereotype of gays, they're just out doing it all the time and being promiscuous, which straight men and women never are that. But liars. But the thing is that there's that kind of thing. And then when what's supposed to happen, or usually happens, is that straight men and women have a tendency to, quote, settle down. They find a mate, they get married, they have children, they do that kind of stuff. But if gay people do that and become pillars of the society by, establishing a relationship and raising children and things of that sort, all of a sudden there's no, that's a horrible thing to do. What a place to be put in. What a place to be put in. You're a terrible person either way. You're either that horrible, promiscuous, sexually, horrible person who's out there all the time doing all those things, trying to seduce all those straight men, or you're my God, you're ruining marriage. You're going to destroy marriage. Now think about it. What is, the thing is that I want you to understand one thing as far as marriage is concerned. I am a firm believer in freedom of religion, and I believe that every religion has the right to define marriage the way that it personally believes. And if you have a church that says marriage is just between Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, as that stupid line has a tendency to go. But I mean, if that's the belief that's there, then I support that. A church has the right to have that. They don't have to. You don't have to. A church should never be forced to do anything as far as that's concerned. That's the whole idea about churches. But that's the point, is that there are churches that do accept gay marriage. There are churches that do accept differences in people, and those differences should be allowed. I mean, there was a time when it was illegal for, it was certainly illegal, but usually it wasn't a question of marriage between a white woman and a black man, because the black man would have a tendency to end up some night hanging from a tree. But it was that we had what were called anti-miscegenation laws, which were created to make sure that white men, they could perhaps dally in the good old tradition of going down to the slave quarters in the middle of the night, but they could have dalliances with black women. But if you married a black woman, you went to jail. You see. Now, I mean, and doesn't that sound awful today? It was the same thing as far as Latinos were concerned. Same thing as far as Asians were concerned. I mean, we have all these things that we did to people who were of color, and that sounds so stupid today. I mean, you look in this community we have in this classroom, and we see people from all different backgrounds. See, when I went to school, when I was a freshman in college, way back in 1954, none of your damn business. Anyway, a long time ago. The reality is that when I went to school, you looked around the room, and you didn't see African American faces. You didn't see Latino faces. You didn't see Asian faces. No, and that's right. And that was the other thing. You didn't see very many women. And the women had a tendency to sit in a corner, and us guys, the white guys, of course, or actually pink guys. The pink guys would sit around, and we'd talk, and we'd solve the problems, and we knew the things to do, and we'd burp and fart and do some scratch and do all those kinds of things that guys would do. And the women who were in the class were just expected to just kind of, ha ha ha, that's funny, and just accept it. And we were in charge, and that was the way it was. And I'll tell you, when anybody wants to tell you about what a great time it was back in the 50s, those were the great days, that's a lie, a lie, a lie. As women, it was an awful time. For men, it was a strange time, because you were being forced to look a certain way, be a certain way, act a certain way. And there's a major reason why the 60s happened. It was not because it was a bunch of depraved people. It was a bunch of people who said, this really sucks. This just doesn't work. It's dishonest. And the changes took place. And that's the kind of thing that happened. And that was a good portion of that was because of our race relations. I mean, we were standing around, we were watching people like Bull Connors, you know, in Birmingham, Alabama, where people were walking along just simply saying, why do we have to sit in the back of the bus? Why do we have to get up and walk back to the back of a bus just because a white person walks in and says, get out of that seat, I want that seat? I mean, that is so ridiculous, so vicious, so stupid, and we all recognize that as being so today. And you say, we've wiped that out of the way. I mean, I'm not saying that racism is over, because there certainly is an awful lot of racism, but you have to dig down a lot deeper to find it than you did back then. Back then, it was very obvious. I can remember riding along in a car with my grandmother, who was the most intensive racist I've ever known. She really was. She never used a word that was an appropriate word for people who were other. She always used the vernacular. I can remember my grandfather worked down on Florence and Central in a butcher shop down there. Okay, and at those days, Florence and Central was not, just simply an African American neighborhood as it is today. And so we would drive down there to pick up my grandfather in the afternoon. And I can remember one day seeing an African American man and a white woman walking along the street, holding hands. Holding hands. Not off in a corner trying to do anything, just walking along, holding hands. My grandmother, who was about this tall and maybe 100 pounds when she was wet, and her hair was long, so that was wet that would add to the weight, opening her window, stopping the car, opening her window, and screaming these obscenities and these racial epithets at this man and this woman. And what happened at that time, because that was like, 1942, something like that, the man and the woman letting go of each other and running into a building to escape the threats from this little old lady, this little old racist, mean-spirited old woman. Well, you see, I mean, there's still a lot of that as far as gays are concerned today. And unfortunately, you find a lot of it, not just in the white community, but you find it in the African American community, in the Latin community, in the Asian community, this unacceptability of that which is gay. I remember, it's been a while now, but I went with my youngest son and I went with my middle son, Nathan, who's gay, and his partner at that time. We went to Magic Mountain. Just went to Magic Mountain. And Nathan and Victor were walking around, and they were, they would hold hands, I mean, it wasn't like they were off in a corner trying to mount each other. They were, it was a very open kind of situation, they just were walking, holding hands in the same way I would hold hands with my wife, or you would hold hands with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever, okay? And we were standing there, and I remember, Eddie was with us too, my other son was there, and my son and I, my two non-gay sons, and I were over at the food stand getting some Cokes and stuff like that. We're going to have lunch. And Nathan and Victor were standing, maybe 50 feet away from us, something of that sort. And all of a sudden, here comes this gang of kids, about 5 guys, and they're just really starting to look Nathan and Victor up and down. And the lucky thing was we got our food and we walked back over, and all of a sudden they dispersed. But it was, the thing you have to understand is that there's this attitude that it's okay to beat up on a gay guy. If a gay guy comes over to a straight guy and says something that's admiring of that person, I mean, it's okay to beat that guy up. Wow, what is that? Now think about it. Here you are. I don't know if you're gay or straight. Okay, I'll just say you're straight. Okay, I'll just say that. And say you're a straight person. Odds are, okay, 10 to 1. You're a straight man, and a gay man comes up to you, and for a moment has an impression that you might be gay, and says something to you that suggests that he'd like to get together. Maybe we just have a moment. You have beautiful eyes. Or, gee, I love that C on your cap. Or geez, you have nice arms there. You got good guns or something like that, Well, am I telling a lie? All of those things are true. And I do like the C on your cap. It's nice. But anyway, I mean, they say that. And I can see that for a moment there's a little sense of discomforture going on there, okay? Well, first of all, I would urge you as a man, and especially if you're a straight man, to realize that at that moment you are receiving a compliment. Now, if he reaches over and tries to grab you by the crotch, that's out of line. That's invasion. But you see, it's also out of line when those of us who are straight men, go after women and walk along and maybe give them just for fun, just a little pat on the butt. Or we say little things to, that hasn't happened, you just heard about that, right? Yeah. Oh, you know about that. And the thing is that one of the reasons I believe that straight men are so frightened of gay men is because of the guilt that we as a group feel about the way that we have a tendency to deal with women. Do you really think, if you think of it, do women really like it when a guy goes, wow, oh man, look at the hooters on that thing, oh man, that woman's got a rack, Boy, isn't that a turn on? It says, oh, he thinks I'm beautiful. Huh? It isn't, right? And the reality is that there are sexual rules, and by sexual I mean the way that we interact in terms of our gender, that really go for, it doesn't make any difference as to whether we're gay or straight, There's ways that we just don't deal with each other, and there are ways that we do deal with each other. My wife would not think it was cute if I were to deal with her in that way, she likes to be respected. And if you know my wife, and she'll be standing outside the door here at the end of class, so you can ask her if you want to. She would not like in any way for me to deal with her in that way. And she doesn't deal with me in that way. She doesn't go, hey, baby, come over here and knock off a little bit. No, she doesn't do anything like that, that's not, what we have is a loving, a very intense relationship. For a couple of year olds, but we have a very intense relationship, but it's also a very respectful relationship because she knows that I see her as beautiful and magnificent, and that I'm committed to her. Okay, and that's beautiful. Okay, oh yeah, and we have been for 26 years. And that's really very powerful. Well, but the thing is that it's all a matter of dealing with that concept of respect. And it's exactly the same thing as far as gay and straight is concerned. And one of the things that I love now that I've kind of gotten my frontal lobotomy fixed, and I can go to a place like the Castro and walk around there and feel very positive and not feel threatened, is this wonderful. I'll be in there and because I'm a straight man who holds my son and walk around and I'm soft and loving with them, sometimes there's not an understanding of that, because sometimes quite often you don't see straight men giving that kind of love and affection to other males. I do. I hug friends. I hug, I didn't hug my students because I didn't want people to misunderstand, but I'll hug a man. I think it's great. I think that there's something really powerful in men expressing themselves in that way, and it doesn't mean, all the nice things I said, I really don't want to go to bed with you. You're just a nice-looking guy. But the fact is that sharing of feeling amongst each other is the thing that ultimately begins to free us, and we begin to go, oh. I don't have to walk around here always trying to be tough and trying to be the male and, all this stuff. I can actually go around and I can see a buddy and I can say, how's it going? How do you feel? I can ask him questions, the kinds of questions that women are able to regularly ask each other. And think about it. Think about it as women. The questions you're able to ask each other, you go out on a date and say a double date, guy and two guys and two women. And you go out and say you're in a relationship with the other person. And you go out and you meet this couple, the first time you've ever really spent any time with. It's just a thing, well, let's go out and have some dinner or something. So you go out and have dinner. Well, I've done this a number of times with my wife. And we go out, and within about 20 minutes, maybe 25 if the waitress keeps coming and interrupting us, my wife will know stuff about that couple. I mean, about their relationship, about the other woman, about things that are going on, and then, and of course, at some point in time, they'll stand up and they'll go to the bathroom together, and stuff. She will know stuff about that other couple and that woman that if I were to know that couple for the rest of my life by myself, I wouldn't have any idea. And the only reason I do is because when we're riding home, she tells me, "Oh, they're great people," and I hear all this stuff, that I never would know. Probably I would have known whether or not he was for the Cardinals or the Tigers, who he's looking at for the God, he spits too. Who's going to win the football? How are the Lakers going to do this year? And that kind of maybe find out a little bit about what kind of work he does. And so I'm like, yeah. And there's always that kind of flexing that's kind of the male thing, okay. And it's just this, it's just ridiculous. Because you know what, I mean, I saw, and Jenny saw this, I saw for the first time a friend that was a student of mine back in 1969, and has become a friend, but we've lost touch with each other, hadn't seen each other in maybe 25 years, okay, 20 years maybe. And Steve came down, just called and said, "Is this you?" And I said, "Yeah, oh, hey, how you doing?" I was out in Arizona, and he was over here in California. And he said, "God," he said, "I'd love to see you." He said, I haven't seen you in ages. How are you doing? And I said, "Well, it just happens I'm going to be over in Southern California next week. I'm going to be at Ginny Downey's class. I'm going to be, in her oral interpretation class. I'm going to be in the other class." And he said, "Well, could I come by?" I said, "Sure, if you want to." So he came by, and he walked in yesterday into this room. And here's this guy that, he's got a funny looking, funky body, just like I do, old fat guy, beard and all this kind of stuff. And I see him and I say, Steve, come here where the fat's cooking. And we gave ourselves a big hug, and we really hugged each other, And it was wonderful. And, there wasn't a moment when I thought, ooh, that's kind of nice. Maybe, no, there wasn't any. It isn't that kind of feeling at all. It's a wonderful, any more than it is when two women who see each other and care for each other, give each other a hug and say, "It's so wonderful to be with you." Because what it's saying is, you're a special person. I really care about you. I love you. I love Steve. He's a wonderful guy. I really have this deep feeling of affection for him. I can't imagine anything, I wouldn't even know what, how, I know. Anyway, that stuff just doesn't even occur to me. But, as far as emotion for the person, he's such a wonderful person. He has such a wonderful outlook on life. He's so neat. I just really like him. I love him as a person, And that's the way that we begin to do away with the kinds of things that so plague our society. The things like abuse. Why is it that a man feels the need to slap his wife around? Why is it that some wives feel the need to start, taking an axe handle to their husband? Usually it's the husband having a problem. But why is that? Why is it that guys will, why is it we have mass murders? Why is it we have rapists? Oh, well, some guys can't get it and they can't afford a hooker. No. Rape is not a sexual act. It's a power act. It's an act of violence, And any person who's been around that knows it's an act of violence. Why do we have rapists? That's such an unnatural thing. There were whole cultures that were here before we ever arrived that, had none of that kind of stuff in them, They were very aware of themselves. And as far as gay people were concerned, there were gay Indians. And some people, gay Indians? Really? Yeah, gay cowboys too, if you saw the movie. There are gay people in every walk of life. Gay Indians. And you know what? In the Native American world, the person who was gay was kind of special. They brought a special, way of looking at the world. As a matter of fact, the Native Americans, if we were to look at the Native Americans, there are a lot of things we could look at and say, there's some things we could emulate there. Like maybe having a peace chief, not just a war chief, peace chief. Whenever the Native Americans would go to war, faced with a battle or something like that, they had one person in their tribe who was designated the peace chief. It wasn't because he was weak. He was one of the strongest people in the tribe. They always made it that way. And what he had to do, what his role was to argue as intensely as he could for peace. And if his arguments were not able to overcome the need for war, then the tribe would go to war. But it never happened where just people just got pissed off and decided to go whack some people. You know, something about our society that's really strange. We got an awful lot of people just getting pissed off and going whacking people. And I think an awful lot of it has to do with our sexuality. We got a lot of people who are scared to death of who they are, scared to death of what the, you know, what their feelings are, you know. I mean, we say, oh, well, you know, I know what it is. Well, you know, I'll bet you any amount of money in this classroom full of very normal people, you know, and you guys too. Yeah, very normal people, you know. If we were to start, say, what's your name, sir? Mark. Okay, now, Mark, I mean, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to use it as an example. I say, okay, Mark, we're going to do an exercise. We're going to start with Mark, we're going to end with Megan, okay? And here's the way we're going to do it. Is what I want you to do is, I want you to think for just a moment, and I want you to tell us, say, the 5 most intense and positive things for you that you like to do sexually, okay? And then we go around the room, and everybody had to answer that, okay? And then we end with Megan, okay? You know, it would be a really interesting thing, because something tells me we wouldn't have a lot of people say, oh, you know, it's the most wonderful thing is missionary style, but only to have children. That's it. It's wonderful. You know, I'll bet you any amount of money we wouldn't have anybody in here just saying that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to get smutty with you guys. Well, yeah, but the fact is, because I'm not hired to do this, and I'm, you know, this is kind of, you know, I'm on my own, and Ginny's retiring, but and by the time they come around and try and get her, she'll be gone. But no, the reality is this, is that all of us have our own little things that make us unique, okay? Whether we're talking about the way we write, the way we are sexual, the way we love, all of those kinds of things. And the reality is that we should support that difference within ourselves so that we all begin to feel a sense of naturalness, as long as what we're doing isn't imposing on someone else or something else. Leave my dog alone. You know, I mean, you know, the fact is that whoever we are being sexual with, starting with ourselves and moving out from there, you know, the reality is that should always be a consensual act. It should be a thing where a person goes, yeah, okay, I'm with you on that. Then you have a really wonderful situation. You know, you have a situation where two people are really loving and caring about each other, no matter what they do. But when you start having one person have power over the other person, then you have something really sick and dangerous, bad, sick, and wrong. And if we are in a situation where as a society we look around and say I was wrong, say you are gay, I don't know, but say you are gay, you don't have to, no, okay, you don't have to shake your head, sorry. But anyway, say you were, you should have the right to be the person you are without us looking at you and all of a sudden saying, you know? Because it could be exactly the same way when somebody goes, he's got a Mexican wife. There was a time when that's the way it was. You know? I mean, if my grandmother were alive when my wife and I came to find each other, she would have been absolutely devastated. Or she would have ignored it, as a lot of people do, and say, oh, she must be under the sun lamp all the time. She's a wonderful tan. You know? That's it, you know? I mean, I mean, just this way of avoiding and being unreal, you know? The key to our life and my life is I want to live my life as real and as honest and as open with the people I'm around as I possibly can, and especially with my son. We love each other very dearly. We support each other. He's coming over in 2 weeks, and I'm going to take him out on the quads and on the boat. We live right at the base of the Grand Canyon. We can see the entrance. We can see we're just up above Lake Mead, and that kid can ride a hell out of a quad. I'll tell you that much. He's a real, he puts his old man to shame. And we can go out and we can sit on a cliff 5,000 feet above my house and dangle our feet over the canyon and look down, and we can talk. And we go, you know, this is really wonderful. And that's what I consider to be a moral, positive life. You do that with your kids. Now, I want to open this to some questions. Do you have any questions or anything like that you'd like to ask? Yes, I have a question over here. I'm going to walk around so people, I'm sorry I left your picture, folks, but I'll get a sound for you here.
How did your other sons react to your other son being gay?
They said, you didn't know? You know, difference in generation. They were onto it, and they just, you know, and I'm going, what? My wife knew, yeah, that's the first thing my wife said. I said, Nathan's gay. And she said, of course. You didn't know? I'm going, you know, I mean, you know, there are times when you feel real stupid, and that was one of the times, you know, really so. Other questions? Yeah.
When you were telling us a story
This
when
is a guy that I embarrassed all day about gay and not gay. Okay.
when you were telling us a story of when your son called and you were like got all emotional, was that more from the surprise that he was gay, or that he almost killed himself?
You mean right now or
Well,
then?
Then and now.
Well, then the biggest amount of surprise of emotion for me was my son. I'm Bill Purkiss, and I played football, and I'm not I'm not gay, and I mean, and I don't know where the hell that came from, except it comes from where all of us who are raised in this culture have it come from. I mean, if you think about it, think about the games you played when you were a child. Smear the Queer, that's one of the things that a lot of people played. Yeah, oh, you're smiling, you remember that. And I mean, yeah, sure you do. I mean, there's a lot of games and stuff like that. And I mean, you go around any junior high school or elementary school, and what do you hear? You hear people talking about fags. Oh, that's so gay. I mean, that's a big thing. That's so gay. Think about that. Think about if you're a person who's been really popular, been really, the parents have loved him. Quite often gay kids are the absolute favorites in the family because they're out there, they're helping, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And all of a sudden, you go from being the most positive person in your family and in your community to being, if anyone found out, a monster. No, I can't say that. And so consequently what you have quite often are people like this preacher that we just heard about, who do anything to make you believe, I'm not that way, because it's so unacceptable. And that's horrible. That's horrible. I mean, remember, at the party when no one wanted her to come in, Jesus said, bring her in, let her sit with me here and have a meal. That was Mary Magdalene, you know what I mean? And it was all about, we don't sit around here and we don't judge people. And we don't sit around and call people names. We don't whack them. We don't make them feel awful. As a matter of fact, when any of his people did that, he always said, don't you do that. Only time I can remember is when he went after the guys who were selling stuff out in front of the church, So that was what was going on for me. Now, that emotion I felt just a minute ago, I mean, part of it's shame. I mean, how close did I come to blowing that? I mean, if my son had come to see me and told me, not over the phone, I mean, it's the luckiest thing that ever happened. He called me on the phone, told me, and hung up. My God, I mean, if he had seen the absolute horrific mess that I was making of it for about 15 minutes, he might have gone ahead and done it, because he would have been right. At that moment in time, that ego that I had and all that kind of stuff was a shame to my son. Oh, my God, he's reflecting on me. And what a stupid thing to do, That makes me very sad. I don't like to ever think that I came close to my sons doing away with themselves, and especially not doing away with themselves because of some stupid thing that I was doing. And that's what it was. Other questions? Oh, another one over here. Okay. Here we go.
How did your family take it? Like, not your wife, but I mean, like aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and stuff, How did they react?
You didn't know? You know, I mean, Nathan, I think came out to every person in the family, all, you know, like the 23rd cousins, something like that, you know, before he came out to me. You know, and I understand that in many ways because, you know, I'm a pretty powerful figure in my family. My sons really respect me. They really love me. They really like my values, as you know, politically and socially and things of that sort, generally speaking. And so I was a very powerful figure for him. And so he was terrified about what's going to happen when I tell Dad. You know, and he didn't even broach that question to my wife. He was able to be around her and all that kind of stuff, but he just couldn't even ask that question because that was the terrible question. And if I rejected him, the reality was I was the most important man in his life. I was his father. He was shaping so much of his life. Here we go again. He was shaping so much of his life after me. And he couldn't do it. I mean, he loves my wife dearly. But he doesn't love her in that way. You know, he couldn't find a person like her that he would love. Well, he found a Latin man and loved him. You know, but you know, he's got that same feeling this old man has. But the fact is that I mean, he had that basic difference. If any person at the outset did not want to be who he was because of who his father was and everything like that, it was my son. Because he would love to have been able to please me in that way, present me with sons, have a wife, and you know, and do all the things that married people do. Couldn't do that, not in that way, and it was, you know, it was a close call because I almost lost him. Other questions? Yes, here we go. Another question over in this direction.
The first time that your son had brought someone over for you to meet that he was dating, were you nervous or did it feel odd?
Well, you know, no question it felt odd. I mean, by this time no one was saying you didn't know. I mean, I was up on it by that time. But the fact is that yeah, it was a strange feel. You know, I think that whenever someone brings someone over to meet the parents, I think there's always a certain level of being checked out. Have you ever gone over to a boyfriend's house or to someone, you know, and the parents meet you, and they're checking you up and down. They're seeing, you know, is this someone I want my son to date? You see, and I mean, I think that that never happens with you. Oh yeah, I know you hate that. Okay, but it's true, and you don't have any children yet. Well, one day you will, and you'll do exactly the same thing because you want the best for your children, you know. And I think I think there's a certain level of naturalness in that. I mean, Jenny has got daughters, and she loves her daughters dearly, and she'll do everything she can for them. But if they bring a man over, she checks them out, you know. That's it. And because she thinks her daughters are and just wait, girl. You don't have any choice. She's going to be working on you soon. But the fact is that as you know, as you get to know that person, you can begin to see. I mean, the rule I did put in was my sons. If my straight sons are having someone over that they care about, I want my gay son to have whoever he cares about, you know, whoever's in his life to come there too. Okay, and be there and be a part of our process. And it was a strange thing because, you know, I mean, to this day, I don't, you know, no matter what, I mean, you get a certain series of beliefs in you. It's really hard sometimes because those things can still come up. It's like racism. You know, I'm a well-trained racist. I told you about my grandmother and all the things that you know that she, you know, brought to my family. So I mean, I can't look at a person of color without having this like resource behind me that says we want to take this one on. We can really hurt this one if we want to. No, that's okay. And I'll put that away because that's not operating, you know, energy for me anymore, but it will always be there. I mean, someday, you know, praise God, there'll be a time when you know, a racist thought isn't even a possibility. But at this point in time, You know, if you've been trained in this culture, you know the words, you know the things, you know, I mean, and that happens. So it's the same thing. I mean, when Nathan walked in with Victor and they were walking around or anything like that, I met him and it just, I mean, I look at this kid and I think, you know, yeah, he's a nice kid, he's a good-looking kid and everything, but what's, you know, I mean, all those kind of thoughts start going on in your head because I just don't understand the mechanics of being gay. You know, whether we're talking about, I mean, everything from being sexual to really having that kind of, I mean, I look at my wife, I mean, I looked at Steve yesterday, and I love that guy tremendously, but I don't look at him the way I look at my wife. And that has nothing to do necessarily with, you know, the kind of sexual relationship, I mean, physical sexuality that my wife and I have. There's just a thing about her that I see in her as a woman that really, you know, turns me on. And I don't really understand that as far as the gay experience is concerned because I'm not a gay man. I haven't experienced that. You know what I'm saying? And so it really doesn't have. I will never understand it any more than I can understand what it is to be an African American. Even though we are both Americans. You know, say you're an African American male. You're not, obviously, but say you were an African American male, and there were things, and you were my age, and you had a circumference rather than a waistline, and all of those things, you know, were equal. Okay. No matter what, I still couldn't understand the world in the way that you, if you were that African American male, understood the world, because the African American experience is just different than is the white American experience. It just is. And I mean, we no matter what we try and do, there's no way I can be black. And there's no way that a black can really be white. You know, it just doesn't happen that way. And it has nothing to do with skin tone. It has to do with the way that we are raised and the way we see the world and the way we've come to see the world and the things that we're taught to fear, the things that we're taught to trust, the things that the way we're taught to do things, the way we're taught not to do things. You know, there are certain very subtle differences in there, and that's the wonderful thing, because you see, with my African American friends, my Latino friends, with my Asian friends, all of a sudden I get a different way of seeing the world. I may not understand it exactly, but to be able to sit down with an Asian woman, for example, Asian family, and have a meal, you know, that is from that culture. And it's not just something that comes to me from a Chinese restaurant or a Vietnamese restaurant. I mean, it's something where I'm there and they're fixing it and all this stuff is happening and I'm in the kitchen just like I would be when I'm cooking chops or something like that, but they're making this wild stuff with all the, you know, and I look at it and stuff's going up in the air and all that, you know, and I go, wow, that's a whole different way of dealing with food, and it's wonderful. Not only does it taste good, but it shows another way of looking at that thing we call food, you know, which obviously I've done a lot of study. All right. Well, it's been really good being with you. I told Ginny I didn't think I had more than about 15 minutes of talk in me, but you know, I'm a person who can definitely kill you with words, and I appreciate you having me here, and keep up the faith up there, folks. You know. It's, you know, up there, you know. And love you all. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Is he a treasure, huh? It's great to have Bill here. And thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. And this is, I know. Well, this is, you know, it's kind of sentimental for us. We've worked together, I guess, 17 years. Yep. And this will be the last semester because I am retiring. And the last moment, yeah, actually. So, ooh, that's kind of big. Oh, now I'll start crying. But, yeah, that's it for today, folks. That's all it was, folks. And thank you again, Bill, for being here. It's always a pleasure. And I think that's a very, very powerful story and a very important way of looking at this issue, which we're going into and going to be talking some more about. Still got lots of work to do before the end of the semester. So, is that Christina? The lovely Christina? Let me just turn this off. This is the lovely Christina. Look right up here. Say hi.